What if I told you that the real difference between the rich and the poor has nothing to do with luck or talent or even how hard you work? That there's a set of hidden principles the wealthy quietly live by, rules so ordinary they almost look invisible to everyone else. Yet these invisible rules shape everything: how they spend, how they think, how they build, and ultimately, how they stay free while others chase freedom. Because here's the truth: most people are not poor because they lack money. They're poor because they've been taught the wrong game. And the wealthy? They're not just playing the right game, they're playing a different one entirely. It all begins with how they think. Imagine two people standing at the same starting line, earning the same amount of money, facing the same opportunities. One ends up struggling month after month, while the other builds a life of abundance, investments, and freedom. The only real difference is mindset. The poor see money as something to spend. The wealthy see money as something to multiply. To the average person, money is a tool to survive. To the wealthy, money is a soldier. Each dollar must go out, work, and return with more soldiers. But here's the catch: nobody tells you that in school. You're told to work hard, save what's left, and hope one day it'll be enough. The wealthy were taught to make money work harder than they ever could. When you look closely, you realize that the wealthy don't chase income, they chase assets. They build machines that pay them whether they're awake or asleep. And that's the first secret. The rich earn money from systems, not just effort. While the poor trade time for money, the wealthy trade money for time. Think about it. There's only 24 hours in a day. No matter how smart or hardworking you are, you can't outwork time. But you can own it. That's what investing is: owning time. Every stock, rental property, or business share is a piece of time that works while you rest. Most people never make that shift. They keep trying to earn more hours instead of owning more assets. That's why the wealthy talk about cash flow while others talk about salary. Cash flow is freedom. Salary is survival. But it goes deeper. Because it's not just what the wealthy do with their money, it's how they see money itself. To the average person, money is emotional. It's fear. It's safety. It's comfort. To the wealthy, money is a measurement of value creation. It's a reflection of how effectively they serve others at scale. Every rich person, at some point, learns a painful truth: no one gets rich by thinking about themselves. The secret to wealth is leverage, and leverage only works when you provide value to many. The poor often ask, how can I make more money? The wealthy ask, how can I solve a bigger problem for more people? That small difference in question leads to an entirely different life. And the second thing the wealthy know is this: money flows to confidence and clarity. Uncertainty repels opportunity. When you don't know where your money is going, it leaves you. When you don't tell it what to do, it disappears. The wealthy plan every dollar with purpose. Their money has direction. That's why even when they lose, they learn. They never panic because they play the long game. To the poor, a bad month feels like failure. To the rich, it's just data. That's another secret: emotional control. Most people sabotage their own growth because they make financial decisions based on emotion: fear of missing out, fear of loss, or impulse buying to feel better. The wealthy practice patience. They master delayed gratification. They let their future selves win the battles their present selves want to avoid. That's why when a poor man gets $100, he buys comfort. When a rich man gets $100, he buys opportunity. You can feel that difference. One is trying to escape reality. The other is trying to build a new one. And you know what's interesting? Most wealthy people you admire today didn't start rich. They started with a decision to stop being consumers and start being creators, to stop scrolling and start building, to stop dreaming about freedom and start designing it. Because the truth is, money hides in problems. Every frustration, every inconvenience, every broken system you complain about, that's where opportunity lives. The poor see problems as walls. The rich see them as doors. That's how every great fortune begins, with a problem someone dared to fix. While others complain about rent prices, someone is learning how to own the building. While others complain about inflation, someone is buying assets that rise with it. While others complain about jobs, someone is learning how to hire. You see, wealth isn't just money. It's mindset multiplied by motion. And here's the third secret the wealthy know: you become what you repeatedly do. They design habits that align with wealth. They read, they plan, they invest, they think long term. Meanwhile, most people spend more time planning their weekend than planning their financial future. That's not judgment, it's conditioning. Society trains you to consume, not to create. Every ad, every social scroll, every dopamine hit keeps you spending. But the wealthy use that same system to sell, to scale, to reach millions. The poor work for money. The wealthy make money work for them. And the wealthiest, they make money work for others. And that's why the world keeps giving them more. When you look closely, you'll notice something strange. The more wealth someone builds, the calmer they seem about money. It's not because they have more, it's because they understand how it works. They know wealth isn't luck, it's a formula. And the formula is simple: earn, save, invest, repeat, scale, delegate, multiply. Every stage builds the next. But here's the twist most people never see. Wealth doesn't start with money. It starts with attention. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. Most people spend their attention on entertainment. The wealthy spend it on education. The poor binge shows. The rich binge systems. The poor escape reality. The rich learn how to bend it. That's why a single insight, a single book, or a single mentor can change an entire financial destiny. Information is leverage, but only when you apply it. That's another thing the wealthy know. The difference between knowing and doing is everything. Most people collect information the way they collect things. They watch, they nod, they agree, then they do nothing. The wealthy act before they feel ready. They move before they have permission. Because money rewards movement. And when you finally understand that, everything changes. Think of every great wealth story you've ever heard. None of them started with comfort. They started with risk, with uncertainty, with someone who refused to stay the same. The wealthy aren't fearless. They've just learned how to use fear as fuel. They know that comfort is the enemy of progress, that security without growth becomes a trap. So while others play safe, they play smart. They take calculated risks that multiply results. They bet on themselves because they've spent years building themselves into something worth betting on. And that's what separates them from everyone else. But there's something deeper most people miss. It's not just what the wealthy do differently, it's what they refuse to do. They refuse to waste time arguing with people who don't have what they want. They refuse to take financial advice from those who've never built anything. They refuse to let emotions control their strategy. They understand that wealth isn't about having the most money, it's about having the most control. Control over your time, your choices, and your future. Imagine waking up and realizing you never have to trade another hour for a paycheck again. That's what real wealth feels like. Not just luxury, but freedom. And that's exactly what the wealthy protect. But freedom doesn't come from luck. It comes from leverage. Leverage through assets, through people, through systems, through knowledge. Think about this. A poor person sees a house and dreams of living in it. A rich person sees that same house and wonders how many people they could rent it to. A poor person sees a product and thinks, I want to buy that. A rich person thinks, how can I sell that? Same object, different mindset, entirely different outcome. And here's the craziest part. The wealthy aren't always smarter. They're just trained to see opportunity where others see limitation. They've developed a skill that most people never build, the ability to think in terms of value creation. That's why even when the economy crashes, the rich find ways to grow. While the average person saves, the wealthy invest. While the average person hides, the wealthy adapt. Because they know wealth isn't about what the market does, it's about what you do when it moves. The poor think about today, the rich think about decades, and that long-term vision changes everything. That's why the wealthy keep winning. They understand compound growth, not just in money, but in habits, relationships, and skills. They compound everything. You see, when most people think of compounding, they think of interest. The wealthy think of momentum. They know every skill you learn, every connection you make, every piece of content you create compounds over time. And when that momentum starts working for you, wealth becomes inevitable. But the truth is, no one starts with momentum. You build it, slowly, quietly, and consistently. And the reason most people never get there is because they quit too early. They trade long-term gain for short-term comfort. They want the reward without the repetition. Yet the wealthy fall in love with the process. They understand that wealth is boring before it's exciting. The daily discipline, the reinvesting, the patience, it's all invisible work that produces visible freedom. Most people underestimate time. The wealthy use it as their greatest weapon. That's why they plan decades ahead. That's why they build generational wealth while others are trying to pay next month's bills. Because they understand that money grows where vision flows. And speaking of vision, there's one more secret the wealthy know, and it's the hardest one to accept. You cannot build wealth alone. Money follows networks. Collaboration multiplies results. While the poor compete, the rich collaborate. They share ideas, leverage skills, and grow together. That's why wealthy families stay wealthy. They pass not just money, but mindset, systems, and connections. That's generational leverage, and that's something you can start building today. Because once you learn the rules of money, you can never unsee them. You start realizing every paycheck is potential capital. Every skill is leverage. Every problem is profit waiting to happen. You start shifting from consumer to creator, from spender to investor, from dreamer to designer. That's when life starts to change. When you stop asking, why is life so expensive? And start asking, how can I own the things that make life expensive? And that's exactly what the wealthy have known all along. But there's still more, much more. Because the biggest secret isn't how they earn money, it's how they keep it. How they legally pay less in taxes, how they use debt to get richer, how they build systems that protect and multiply their wealth while others are losing it to inflation and bad habits. And that, right there, is where the real game begins. And that's where most people stop, right at the edge of understanding. They finally see how the wealthy think differently, but they never see how that thinking turns into the empires we all read about. Because after the mindset comes the method. And that's where the real separation begins. Once the wealthy learn how money works, they build invisible machines around it. Quiet structures that protect, multiply, and recycle cash long after most people have spent theirs. It's not luck, it's design. Every dollar they earn gets an assignment. None of it sits idle. While most people let money slip through their fingers, the wealthy trap it inside systems. Businesses, trusts, real estate, partnerships, each one designed to keep that money moving in circles they control. That's the reason a rich person's dollar can live 10 lives while the average person's dollar dies after one. The first life of that dollar might start as income. The second becomes investment. The third turns into cash flow. The fourth pays for an expense that creates another deduction. And by the time that same dollar returns home, it's already brought friends. It's a financial ecosystem, a private economy of their own making. The wealthy never let their money leave the family. They let it travel, but it always returns with more experience. They've built an understanding that money doesn't like chaos, it likes clarity. So they build clarity into everything: where it goes, why it's there, what it must do before it comes back. That's why when the average person talks about saving, the wealthy talk about circulating. Because savings stagnate, but circulation compounds. They park their money where it can breathe, income-producing assets that spin off cash. Stocks with dividends, rental properties, digital assets, equity in businesses, royalties, intellectual property, each one a new tributary feeding the river of wealth that flows quietly behind the scenes. And every time that river widens, they add another layer of protection around it. Insurance, legal structures, tax shelters that are perfectly legal, yet completely misunderstood. Because the wealthy know that the game of wealth isn't about hiding money, it's about positioning it. The poor position money in banks. The rich position money in motion. A dollar in the bank loses value every day. A dollar in motion, working through assets, beats inflation, pays dividends, and builds equity. That's why you'll rarely hear a true wealth builder brag about how much cash they have. They talk about ownership because ownership outlasts income. They own systems that print income on command. They own rights, brands, pipelines, platforms, things that don't just make money, they make more ways to make money. And here's something most people never realize. The wealthy are not obsessed with money itself. They're obsessed with control. Control over time, control over taxes, control over the flow of cash. That's why they spend more time building the rules of their game than playing someone else's. They structure companies that own other companies. They create entities that lease, license, or lend to each other. So instead of paying income tax, they earn through dividends, capital gains, or rents, each taxed differently, each more efficient. Meanwhile, the average person fights for a raise that gets devoured by taxes before it even lands. The wealthy don't fight that battle, they redesign it. They understand the tax code isn't punishment, it's a map. And the map rewards builders, investors, and innovators, so they play the role the system rewards. When governments want housing, they become landlords. When governments want jobs, they become employers. When governments want innovation, they invest in research. Every incentive hides a clue, and the wealthy collect those clues the way others collect pay stubs. But maybe the greatest secret is that wealth isn't a sprint, it's a relay. Each generation passes the baton a little further than the last. They don't just leave money, they leave manuals. While the poor say, I want to give my kids what I never had, the wealthy say, I want to teach my kids what I learned. Because without that education, inherited money evaporates. That's why wealthy families hold meetings about values, not just valuations. They teach their children about compounding, gratitude, stewardship. They don't hide the numbers, they explain them. And that's how wealth survives. Knowledge keeps it alive. But let's strip away the glamour for a second, because there's a quieter truth hidden underneath all this strategy. Discipline. The wealthy live by financial calendars. They schedule reviews, audits, investment check-ins. They measure progress like athletes training for the next game. It's not always exciting, but consistency is the engine of compounding. Every decision is filtered through one question. Does this expand or shrink my freedom? That question alone guides how they spend, invest, and even rest. Freedom is the currency. Money is just the measurement. That's why you'll often find the wealthy living below their means long after they could splurge. They're not impressed by price tags anymore. They're impressed by performance. A car that depreciates doesn't excite them. A business that doubles cash flow does. They've learned to trade dopamine for dividends. And if that sounds cold, it's not. It's clarity. Because real freedom isn't about having everything. It's about needing nothing. The more control you gain, the less external validation you crave. That's why wealth often looks quiet. It's not hiding, it's just content. But don't mistake contentment for complacency. The wealthy are always in motion, just not in chaos. They expand strategically, using systems that feed each other. For example, a business creates income. That income buys real estate. The real estate produces cash flow that funds investments. The investments yield dividends that feed new ventures. Round and round until one decision decades ago becomes an ecosystem that never stops producing. It's a symphony of strategy, and anyone can learn to play it. Because the steps are public, the discipline is private, and maybe that's the most uncomfortable truth. Everything the wealthy know is already out there. Books, podcasts, mentorships, even free content like this. But most people won't act, because knowledge without action feels safe. The wealthy act before they're ready. They understand that clarity comes from movement, not before it. They treat mistakes as tuition, not failure. That's why they win faster. They fail faster. While others wait for the right time, the wealthy make time right by moving. They know momentum multiplies money. And here's something else they quietly understand. Time is the most valuable compounder of all. You can lose money and make it back, but every day you delay learning, investing, or building, you're losing compound time, something you can never repurchase. That's why they start early and stay consistent. Even small amounts, compounded long enough, beat brilliance that starts too late. Now, there's one more layer that holds everything together, the wealth mindset in motion. The wealthy don't chase trends, they chase principles. They know technology changes, markets shift, but principles of value, leverage, and patience never expire. They build around fundamentals, serve more people, add more value, protect downside, reinvest upside, repeat indefinitely. And while most people chase instant gratification, the wealthy cultivate financial patience. They understand exponential growth always looks slow at the beginning, then suddenly unstoppable. That's the power of compound thinking. Slow, silent, then shocking. It's why a small business you built in your 20s might look average until it suddenly owns the market in your 40s. Why an index fund that seems boring today could fund a life of freedom tomorrow. But you'll never see that if you quit halfway. The poor quit when it gets hard. The wealthy persist when it gets boring, because they know the finish line only appears to those still running. And now, after all of this, the question becomes, where do you start? Not with millions, not with miracles, but with awareness. Awareness of where your money goes, awareness of what you believe about it, awareness of how your habits either build or break your freedom. You start by tracking, learning, applying, repeating, by reading what the wealthy read, by thinking how the wealthy think, by refusing to spend another year living paycheck to paycheck when the blueprint for wealth is right in front of you. Because here's the truth, few want to hear. Wealth is predictable, not guaranteed, but predictable. If you follow the principles long enough, you get the results. The challenge is endurance. Most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can build in 10. The wealthy think in decades. That's their unfair advantage. They plant trees whose shade they may never sit under, and that's why their families do. So when you hear the phrase generational wealth, remember, it's not about inheritance. It's about intention multiplied by time. The poor hope the future will change. The wealthy design it, and you can too, because wealth doesn't care where you start. It cares how long you're willing to stay consistent. It starts the moment you decide to stop renting your time and start owning your value. The moment you stop working for money and start working with it. The moment you stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like a creator. That's the transformation. That's what the wealthy know that most never learn. And the beautiful thing is, it's all available to you right now. You don't need permission. You just need persistence. So take what you've learned here and begin building your own system, one piece at a time. Educate yourself, invest consistently, protect your assets, build networks, and stay patient. Because over time, that's how financial independence is built, not in bursts, but in layers. And one day you'll look back and realize you stopped chasing wealth the moment you started understanding it. This is Financial Primer, where we pull back the curtain on how money truly works, so you can build, keep, and multiply it with purpose. If you've found value here, make sure to subscribe, share this message, and start designing your financial future today, because the best time to build wealth was yesterday. The second best time is right now.